And after that, we were able to increase our local market instead of depending on external market or depending on the tourists. And after that, I got an opportunity to coordinate a World Bank program that was dealing with arid areas. And in that World Bank program where I was leading or was coordinating in West Pokot, we were dealing with communities. And basically, we are dealing with what we call community development approach, where the communities are the ones saying what they want. And what the community say is what we implement. And I think from that, I developed an experience on how to deal with communities, community mobilization, participatory approaches, and community participation, so that they're able to make sure the communities have a greater role, have a center role in developing their own needs, raising their own needs, and developing their own development agenda. And that community mobilization and what we call stakeholder mapping, I had the opportunity to map all the stakeholders so that we can work together to bring up, to make sure that the communities are well endowed, the communities are well trained to participate in their own development. And I think that's a key area which I can bring to the commission, that community mobilization and participatory way of doing things, to make sure that the communities are involved in what we are doing. But in the commission now, to make sure that the voters and other stakeholders are involved in what the commission does. In West Pokot also, I introduced camels, whereby there were no camels in that region, but because of the drought, the recurrent droughts, I decided that in order to have food, because people are dependent on this relief food, every year relief food. I said, no, we can't continue like this. Why don't we have drought-tolerant animals that are able to withstand those areas? And I introduced those camels, and today, if we go to that area, you find that the issue of relief is almost zero. People don't depend on relief because those camels, they can grow on, and they can do well on any environment. They're able to produce enough milk. They can also sell. Camels are very expensive. Today, one camel is almost more over 100,000. So they can also sell and still feed their families and educate their children. And along the way, also, we had there was a program which we developed called National Agriculture and Livestock Extension Program. After I left the arid lands, I came to Nairobi. We developed extension approaches whereby we were using to carry out extension services. And along the way, I got an opportunity to be nominated as a member of Transition Authority. And in Transition Authority, we were dealing with facilitating transition to developed system of government. After the promulgation of our Constitution of 2010, the promulgation the Constitution created two levels of government: the national government and the county governments. The national government was the former central government. So I had an opportunity to transist this nation from that centralized system of government to the devolved system of government where we have today. And my thematic area at the Transitional Authority is development of the financial system within the counties. I spearheaded development of the finance system in the counties. I spearheaded the treasuries, creation of treasuries in the counties, creation of financial systems in the counties, together with the National Treasury. I was a key lead person in those areas. So what I learned is that this was a new program. And using my knowledge on program management, I have had a lot of extensive experience on project management. Using my knowledge on project management, it gave me an opportunity to know that transition to devolved system of government is just like any other project that I have coordinated for all this for over 25 years. So that gave me an impetus to to know that we can be able to make it. And I think we made it to where we left. Because, however, the time was very short, but at least we made sure that most functions which were being held by the national government went to the counties. Most structures were developed in the county government. The governors were up and running because these were new systems. And we had an opportunity to train those governors to know what was their roles and what the laws talks about. And something that really I feel it was interesting is that when we got into Transitional Authority, we were given 5 laws to implement. And developing those laws, translating those laws, and some of us are not lawyers, translating those laws until they are practically used by in the counties or in the government, was a big achievement that I feel as a person. That's what I've achieved. And the other thing that I feel that I've been able to bring to the Commission is the issue I've talked of public participation and community mobilization, which is critical in voter training and education. I also had an opportunity involved in the development of civic education manual. The civic education manual was training the communities or the citizens to know their rights. And it touched all aspects of the Constitution, from devolution, finance management, even legislation, elections, and all the parts of the Constitution. So I had an opportunity to be involved in that development of that manual that is currently being used in civic education in this country. So what I'm saying is that it was a great time in my life, an experience in my life that gave me a lot of interest in working with communities. And number 2, along the way, I've been involved in elections. I've been a presiding officer for the last Thank you, Madam. I've been a presiding officer in most of these elections, starting with the Q14, the Mrolong of 1988, and I've seen our election grow up to where we are today, and that gives me an interest to serve in the electoral body. And finally, currently, we are working with communities in the Northeastern and Turkana as my livestock specialist in a project funded by World Bank, dealing with communities that have been hosting refugees for the last 25 years and trying to integrate them. Some people became refugees and they were Kenyans. That was one of the challenges we had. When refugees came to this country, the citizens felt that the refugees were being treated better than them, so they registered themselves as refugees. And today, the Ministry of Interior is working to reintegrate our Kenyans who registered themselves as refugees to become Kenyans. So we are working with those host communities to bring up their development agenda and to make sure that they are integrated. So the government is working towards integrating them. And Madam Chair, I've seen your name. And I think, let me stop at that so that I can give time to the people. Maybe, Madam Chair, one thing is that I have experienced there's a lot of insecurity in those areas, but I have a lot of experience on dealing with insecurity in those northeastern areas. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mutet. You'll have an opportunity to share more as we ask you questions. I have a question for you. Are you a registered voter?
Yes, I'm a registered voter. Mm-hmm. I voted the last election in a place called Kokwapelekwa Primary School, Leland Ward, Pokot South Constituency, West Pokot County.
Thank you so much. I'll now request Mr. Morris Kimuli to ask you a few questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Bwana Mutet.
Yes, sir.
I can see you have very high qualifications in pig production. This is a Master of Science.
Yes.
In pig production.
Yes.
There's a question I've always had in my mind. I don't know whether they taught you that in college. Which is the best way of cooking pork?
The best way of cooking pork is frying.
Just fry?
Yeah.
Hakuna maji?
Hakuna maji.
Usiweke maji?
Usiweke maji.
Lakini hiyo hasomeshi kule?
Wapi?
Hiyo wanajifunza huku kando kando tu.
Hiyo wanasomesha kule. Wakati nilikuwa UK nilisomeshwa.
There is another debate that we have been having, and now that you are an expert, and a public interview is also an opportunity to educate members of the public.
Yes.
You can now confirm that from an expert in animal production, the gizzard is a preserve of the male folk. You can confirm that?
Among communities. In some communities in this country.
Scientifically?
Not.
Is there anything scientific?
No, there is no scientific.
Makes the gizzard a preserve of men?
No, there is no scientific.
Nothing?
Yeah.
Anyway, that was just a by the way. You know, as men, we like to believe that the gizzard is ours. I have seen that you have worked with pastoralist communities.
Yes, most.
You know, their defining nature is that most of them move from place to place in search of pasture and water for their livestock. If you become a commissioner, what do you think would be the best policy to put in place to ensure that pastoralist communities are integrated in our voting registration, and they can exercise their rights to vote? Bearing in mind that in Kenya, voting takes place on a single day.
Thank you, Mr. Kimoli. Pastoralists, as you rightly put, they move from place to place in search of pasture and water. And regardless of the voting, regardless of the elections, they still move. Because their interest is to be sure that, to make sure that they have food. So election is like a secondary to their lifestyle. So what I feel as a specialist in that area, and now if I join the commission, what I feel is that we'll be able to develop a policy what can allow what you call mobile voting system. Because they stay in one place and they move as a team, as a group, such that even if they were registered in a particular area, they still move to another area. So it is, if we can develop a policy that we have a mobile voting system, such that we get to know where the people currently are, so that we can move to where they are. And we'll be able to encourage them to make sure they vote. That the voting gadgets and the voting day becomes a polling center, that place where they are. And then, but it requires a policy with involvement of all stakeholders, so that there is no stakeholder that will feel the polling station has moved. But those areas, we get the stakeholders, the people there, the leaders and everybody else, to understand why the Electoral Commission is doing that.
You know that our system of elections is based on electoral units.
Yes.
And they are delimited.
Yes.
So if pastoralists move from one electoral unit into the next, how do you deal with that?
If they move to the next, depending on where they were registered, which electoral unit were they registered? So if they were registered in one particular electoral unit, the same people, even if they are voting, for example, if they are registered in here, this is, I don't know, this is Stare, and they move to Westlands, it's the same people whom we registered here in Stare, that polling station, and they have moved to a polling somewhere in Westland, so you can still move the gadget and they register to that place. So that as they vote for that particular electoral area where they were registered. But as I said, it requires a lot of policy shift and understanding and participation.
Now, you have said you've been involved in the electoral process for quite a number of years.
Yes.
Do you know the practical situation now? How do pastoralist communities exercise their rights to vote as we speak today?
As we speak today, those who are around, they just come and vote. And that's why at times you find that they turn up during the election day depending on what period of the year, the turnout during the election day may be low, because some of them may have moved. So it's only those who are registered in particular polling center or polling station that will come in those areas and vote. So the challenge is that you'll find that if half of them have moved to
now,
yes.
When I look at your CV, on your achievements, you said at number 7, and it is in bold, which means that you give it some level of significance. You successfully presided over general elections of 1988, that's Mulolongo.
Yes.
1992, the first multi-party elections under Moi. 1997, hotly contested, leading to IPPG reforms because they were deemed to be unfair. 2002, 2007, Kenyans went to war with each other. Why do you think you still need the prefix, the adjective successfully?
Because I was a presiding officer, and my polling station where I was, there were no challenges. There was nothing that came out of my polling station or irregularities that came out of that polling station, because I was in charge of that polling station, and the voting was smooth. And even when in 2007, when there were problems in this nation, there were no challenges. And even all the polling stations that I have been a presiding officer, there has never been, even if their petition it has never touched those polling stations.
So even for 1988, you would still be comfortable to use that adverb, successfully conducted?
Because that was the system that time.
That was the system.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You also served with the Transitional Authority.
Yes.
The Kinudi Wamangi Transitional Authority.
Yes.
And do you know the body that took over the functions of the Transitional Authority after you finished your work?
Yes, I know the body. There is a body called IGRTC in the Governmental Relations Technical Committee.
It's under the Intergovernmental Relations Act.
Yes.
And it creates a committee under Section 12B.
12B.
Now, it deals with relationships between the national government
and the county government,
the devolved units.
Yes.
Do you think, now being acquainted with this system, do you think there is an entry point for collaboration between IEBC and the regime and IGR? They are
stakeholders. The IGRTC can be stakeholders of the IEBC because they have a depository knowledge of the county government, or the relationship between the national government and the county government. So, as a stakeholder, there are still things which they can add value to the work of IEBC.
Like one?
One, and IGRTC, which is a committee, they have a closer relations with the county governments. They may know this, I don't know how to put it, but they know they are closer relations with the county governors, and they are able to also to assist the commission in reaching out to some of those areas which are not able to be reached.
Reaching out?
Yes.
Now, when devolution came, it also came with new administrative units.
Yes.
Do you know some of the new administrative units that came with devolution? Administrative?
Yes, they came up with what we call village administrative units. Mm-hmm. They came up with the ward administrative units and sub-county administrative units. Yes.
Anything else?
Pardon?
Anything else?
Anything else with what came with devolution?
Yes. Administrative units.
Administrative units?
Yes.
No, those are the ones which are stated in the law.
So how do these administrative units overlap with electoral units?
Most of the county government administrative units follow the electoral units, because we have the ward administrator, which is under the county government, and it's a ward. It's an electoral unit. We have the sub-county, which
the ward as an administrative unit is
in the sub-county in the counties. It's an administrative unit.
The ward is an electoral unit. In the administration, it's called what?
It's ward.
It's ward.
Yes, ward.
What is a village?
A village is a place or the smallest area.
Is it an electoral unit?
No.
It's not an electoral unit.
Not an electoral unit.
Then from the ward?
We have the constituency, which is equivalent to a sub-county.
Is equivalent to a sub-county?
Yes.
Okay. That's okay, you are right. Now, what happens if the office of a governor falls vacant?
If the office of a governor falls vacant, the deputy governor takes over.
The deputy governor takes over?
Yes.
What of circumstances where the vacancy is created because the election of the governor has been nullified by a court of law?
You know, when the election of the governor is nullified by the court of law, the deputy governor also ceases to be elected because they are in the same they are in the same paper. The deputy governor and the governor himself. If it is nullified by court of law, that they all go. The person who will take over is the Speaker of the County Assembly.
Yes.
For 60 days.
And what happens when a seat in Parliament is declared vacant?
When a seat is declared vacant by the Speaker, a writ is written to the chairman of IEBC to make sure that to declare the seat and organize by-elections.
In an election, you would normally have number 1 and number 2.
Yes.
Don't you think it would be more efficient financially and logistically to just take the next person who was number 2 if the seat is declared vacant? If he resigns or dies, can you just, instead of going for a by-election, can you just go for the next guy?
No, because you know, elections is the people exercise their will. And when they elected me as number 1, they had trust in me, not the second person who became number 2. So the best thing is to allow them again to go and elect their person who they trust. Yes, because if they wanted this number 2, they could have elected him.
But are you aware that there are some countries that do not do by-elections?
Maybe I'm not aware.
You're not aware?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Asante sana.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kimuli. I'll request Dr. F.S. Abdallah to ask you some questions, Simeon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mutet.
Yes, sir.
I was prepared to talk to you all, to have a conversation on electoral matters and IEBC and all that. But hearing you talk this morning with all the passion you have on animals and how to cook them and all that, I decided that you allow me to have a conversation on the animal husbandry first. Right, then we go to the other matters.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Mutet, this conversation, of course, in no way I'm trying to say that you did not qualify to apply or you don't qualify to be the next commissioner of IEBC, right? I'm just having this a conversation to start with so we can learn and all of us in Kenya can learn, and then we go to the, because you showed a lot of passions. Now, tell me, Mr. Mutet, are you aware that the revival of KMC and the KDF?
Yes, I'm aware.
Right.
Yes.
Are you also aware that the government of Kenya has intentions of putting another abattoir in Lamu and in all other counties?
There are many abattoirs coming up in many counties. Yeah.
So there's a lot of potential in revamping and modernizing the abattoirs, and where your expertise will be needed quite, maybe you'll be in demand in the next year or so, right? Mr. Mutet, please educate us. Is it true that our cows or our livestock, which normally used to be taken to KMC, I'm referring to KMC because that was the famous one, was between 120 to 150 kilos? That, I mean, there was no feeding lots been developed in this country for many years?
Thank you very much, Ms. Dr. Abdallah, for that question. Our cattle, mainly earlier on, especially when KMC was functioning well, most of them came from these asal areas. And most of the cattle in asal areas are indigenous. They don't grow much. So you may be right to say that they were between 150, 180, maximum could have even been 200. That is dead weight.
Okay.
So it may have been right because most of the cattle came from those areas, pastoral areas, and they are indigenous animals which do not grow as fast as those exotic animals. That
As fast as, but they could.
Yeah, they could, but genetically, they are not meant. They are not
Go
meant.
to 280 to 300.
Yes, if you feed them well, and also maybe crossbreed them with other genes to make sure that they grow.
And also having the feeding loads right to the facilities would help.
Yes.
Like the one who is supposed to be in Bachuma and all that. And is it, I've been made to believe that the cattle in Turkey are between 340 to 400 kilos?
The cattle in Turkey?
Turkey.
In?
Turkey. You know, it's a big industry, the abattoirs
Yes.
is big, yeah?
Yeah, because most of the cattle are exotic cattle and these beef animals, because we have beef breeds and then non-beef breeds. So when we have the actual beef breeds, like Aberdeen Angus, Hereford, and Blackhead, so you find that those animals are big. They weigh up to 1,000 kilos live weight. So when you slaughter, you get around 400, 500.
Right. So is it also true that 36% to 40% of a cow is the meat? 36 to 40%?
It's about 40, depending on the breed.
Right. I didn't train like
but,
you. I'm just.
I know you are not trained, but depending on the breed, the percentage is between 40, 45, maximum 50.
Right. Okay. So the discussion I'm having is because I thought that we need to develop also the 60%. You know, the 60% which normally has been rendered in other countries. In here, I think we don't have that industry.
Yeah, we can still develop up to between 55 to 60%, because generally there's a maximum that you can develop to. Because because the more you develop, even the cow, the meat, also the other waste, the other offals also increase. So you find that the ratio still may remain the same.
Right. Okay, thank you for that knowledge. Now, Mr. Mutet, the IEBC, right? Where does the commissions get its funds from?
The primary source of commission fund is the government, is the government being budgeted through the National Treasury and Parliament. So that's the primary source of funding. But they can also get funding from other sources like development partners. For example, when we interacted with them when I was in the Transition Authority, some development partners, especially UNDP, were funding the IEBC, and those development partners, they only fund specific activity of the Commission. For example, they can fund voter education as an activity of the Commission.
Right, so under the Act, the funds of the Commission may consist of any grants, gifts, donations, or other endowment given to the Commission. How, in your view, can the Commission safeguard its independence when it receives funding in the form of gifts, donation, or other endowments?
One of the areas that the Commission can be able to safeguard their independence, they had created what we call IEBC Fund, and such that to be able to keep your independence, all the funds should come into one source. so that even if it is UNDP who brought it, it is the government who brought it, they are put in one particular basket so that it is used as IEBC funds. And in that, there is no particular person who will take credit for the funding of IEBC. Because if a particular person takes credit for this funding, it can easily influence the activities of the IEBC. But if the funds are put in a basket of so many partners, there will be no particular person who can be able to say, because they may not know how much I gave, how much so and so gave, and that will be able to safeguard the independence so that they are able to manage their resources as IEBC.
Right, that funding, that basket is already there, and it's called the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Fund.
Yes.
Right. Now, who administers this fund? Who administers this fund?
The CEO of the commission is the one in charge of the funds because he is the accounting officer.
Is the funds of the IEBC subject to audit by the Auditor General?
Yes, because it's a public fund. They get money from public, so they are subjected to the audit by the Auditor General.
And when is this supposed to be done?
The auditing?
Yes. When is the IEBC finished their part and goes to the Auditor General?
Of course, after every financial year, which ends in June, auditing starts immediately. In most cases, starts around August, September, after they have developed what's called after they have submitted the finance statement to the Auditor General, and they come and audit.
Every 3 months after?
After?
3 months after the
yes, 3 months year. After the financial year. But this year they have started early.
Because they need the funds. Thank you very much, Mr. Mutet. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. F.S. Abdallah. I'll now request Mr. Gideon Solonka to ask some questions.
Thank you, Chair.
Chini ya uongozi wa Rais Uhuru Kenyatta, serikali kuu imewekeza kwenye miradi tofauti ya maendeleo katika kaunti mbalimbali ambayo imeleta manufaa mengi kwa wakazi wa mashinani. Wiki hii kwenye Project 254,
in our different capacities, we must all work closely to tackle any challenges standing in the way of a better Kenya for our people.
Kabla port ijagunduliwa vizuri, ijaanza vizuri, kazi ilikuwa nadra, lakini venye port ilikuwa revived, venye the president alirevive port, tukaanza kuona opportunities.
Kifika Aero Junction tulikuwa hapo na maburutano ya barabara, na tunaona kama saa hizi lami iko kabisa mpaka nje.
Kulia pole. Unajua mimi tu ukisema tu maneno ya mama, unanikumbusha pia mimi mama yangu.
Unanitolea shilingi 10 ya 20 shillings, ati hii ni ya kunichangia. Una ujinga.
Wanapigana mbele ya watu wakiomboleza.
Wanapigana. Zile ng'ombe zile chinjwa kule.
Ni wewe.
Si ni mimi.
Ni wewe.
Wewe. Ile suti nilenua ni mimi.
Si ndio wewe, ni wewe.
Sasa yeye ni ngamia, ukamuita yani na nundu yake ukasema hata si hapa nyuma, nundu yake ni hapa mbele. Hivyo ndio ulisema, ndio akasirika. Na hata malaika ngablela akakuja sinjafanya what. Huyu ndio ma what.
Nissan Serena ndio hii, na unaweza kuwa wewe ndio tunapikia simu. Kodi ya Nissan Serena ni NS. alafu kisha kwenye amount ni 50 bob. Hii Nissan Serena tunakupatia na shilingi 50.
Kujiunga na QuickBid ni rahisi. Enda kwenye M-Pesa, bonyeza paybill, kisha weka business number 4032353. Kwenye account weka kodi ya bidhaa unayotaka na bidi yako ya chini zaidi. Kwa mfano TV 16, kisha weka shilingi 20 tu kama idadi yako. Weka bidi yako pia kwenye www.quickbid.co.ke. Kumbuka, bidi ya chini zaidi ya kipekee ndio hununua. QuickBid, bidhaa bora kwa bei ya chini.
Kupata skiza tune ya maisha, bonyeza *811*965#. Maisha ni mafupi, hivyo si vyema kumaliza muda mwingi katika malumbano. Hesabu baraka zako, wathamini rafiki zako na tabasamu ili udumishe amani. Bonyeza *811*965#. *811*965#.
This is where it all began. As the mother of broadcasting in Kenya, you can trust KBC to bring you authentic news and programs to your living room. As KBC, we take pride in our unrivaled heritage as Kenya's trusted national broadcaster. Commanding over 92% digital television signal coverage of our country, 23 radio services that cut across our entire language spectrum, a national, regional and international digital presence backed by the most experienced and top-notch broadcast professionals in the industry.
A very good evening to you.
The new look Kenya Broadcasting Corporation is truly ahead of the pack. Turn to the mother of broadcasting in Kenya for stories that resonate with our identity, our aspirations as a people united in purpose. Real stories of hard work, of passion, of creativity, of big dreams. Stories that cement our nationhood. Stories that bring us together as one. We take pride in our shared heritage and destiny. KBC, informing, educating and entertaining Kenyans as one nation. KBC, Kenya's listening, Kenya's watching.
It's a good morning to you. Thank you very much for finding time to be with us. This is BizCheck. We are live from Broadcasting House. Of course, we have a lot lined up for you today, from the political world to the world of sports, as well as business. My name is O'Brien Kimani. At KBC Channel 1 is our Twitter handle, and at KBC Channel 1 this morning, we want to discuss the issues around infrastructural development here in Kenya. It is often said that Kenya is a construction site, because every part of this nation that you visit, there is an infrastructural project that is taking shape. From the Nairobi Expressway to the expansion of Lamu Port, as well as the Mombasa Port as well, and various roads running through this country. This country has never seen this level of development that we are currently witnessing. To discuss this topic further, and of course to help us put all this into perspective, I'm joined in studio by Sylvester Kasuku. He's the immediate CEO of LabSet. He is a former infrastructure secretary at the office of the Prime Minister, and now he is a transport and infrastructure policy analyst and expert, and a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Thank you very, very much indeed for finding time to be with us. For a man who carries along